Okay, welcome to another edition of Real Estate Investor Talk. I'm sitting here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg with CAJ Van Zyl, who's a master investor. And Kai has got some wonderful inspirational stories to tell you about property. He is our master investor of the month. So without further ado, Kai, I'd like to welcome you to Master Investor.
Thank you.
I know we've had a fantastic chat, and I was very inspired by what you said and how you started in property and that kind of stuff. A lot of our readers follow people like yourselves, and I try to learn from as much people as possible. And I was very sort of enlightened by what you had to say, and certainly I learned a few tricks as well. And I learn all the time when I talk to people, whether you Donald Trump, who I have met, to Sol Kersner, who I've also met, who's in a little bit of trouble as well. But we learn from people like that, and I learn from you as well. So Kai, maybe you can tell our readers out there and our viewers out there a little bit about yourself, how it started, and your bit of philosophy in property investment.
Yes, Neil, thank you. We are students mainly in Johannesburg, and through my investment in that market, we've had a lot of sub-markets that have opened up within the student accommodation context. What started out as a pension fund planning instrument for an entrepreneur like myself in his old age turned into a full-time business very quickly. And we were lucky enough to get the timing right when we started the investment and the company. And the inception of the company was around 2000, when nobody wanted to touch property, and we just came from a 20% plus interest rate cycle. Interest rates declining, property values booming, demand for education booming. We had a thriving business all of a sudden. From there on, we just kept expanding. We've now expanded into the insurance industry as a result of student accommodation, with unique products that have been written just for the student industry. We've expanded into management dedicated to the student industry. So a range of exciting and additional things to just accommodating students. We've also looked at expanding the portfolio into a short-term stay market, which is a market that would fall between student accommodation and the guest house market. I've had a foray in commercial and retail property, which has been going successful, but all roads eventually led back to student accommodation as an investment and as a growing industry, and something that has also been able to keep track with inflation and beat inflation, and also something that's quite recession proof ultimately, we found.
Fantastic. I think what I picked up from our conversation was the fact that a lot of your property investments actually turned out into businesses, and they were actually inspired through property initially. Tell us a little bit expand a little bit about, from our discussion that we had on those particular businesses that came about.
The insurance business, I think, for one, is one that goes to my heart and quite exciting. And what we realized was that if you stay with us and something happens to your property or your personal possessions on our property, you had no recourse. And typically a parent would ask me, what would happen if something happens to my children's goods on your property? And I would say, madam, thanks for the question, but unfortunately you bring your possessions on own risk to the property, and I've never been able to give them an alternative. What we decided then was to write a product that could cater for that market, and something that had to be affordable, something that could cover your most valuable belongings, such as a cell phone and a laptop, and something that could offer you medical, could offer you legal, and a range of other benefits. We've now launched the product called For Sure, which we're excited about, 99 Rand a month. First product of its kind in the country, and you can insure your goods now in a shared accommodation environment.
Fantastic. And I think then also prior to that, Kai, was the fact of, what about the letting business? What about also the renovation business, and how you managed to build your team around you?
The growing as rapidly as we did in the early days, I got very concerned that we were making use of outside management agencies, and concerned about the fact that all of my cash flow is tied up within one management agency. we subsequently started our own agency that specializes in student accommodation, and something that I could use my history and experience in making even more specialists. This agency not only looks after our portfolio, but then also other investors in the area, and we could for the first time offer a dedicated specialist student letting product to investors other than myself. Also in the process of acquiring properties, we've had a big emphasis on renovation of the properties and getting it up to our specifications. So I've ended up building an entire team around our renovation style and quality style, from plumbers, electricians, builders, painters, and the likes. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so Kaya, let's get into a little bit about the things that have inspired you to obviously take these massive steps, move into property, because you've grown from a very small base, and I would call you a large investor here in South Africa. So what has inspired you? What has been that undertone that's driven you, that's made you move forward and be successful? You are successful. And also you found that fantastic niche, which I think is part of your success, that student accommodation. So give us a little bit of those undertones of what really makes you, sort of drives you.
I think the big thing for me all along has been financial independence, and also understanding basic financial rules, things like appreciating properties versus depreciating assets such as motor vehicles, understanding things such as inflation, so forth, how those things can work for you. Once I got a grip of that and I understood it within a property context, it got exceptionally exciting for me. It enabled me to grow much quicker than I could just by understanding those principles. Being able to see a balance sheet that grows over time with fairly minimal input was something that excited me a lot. Mm-hmm. Being able to afford the things that I wanted to afford in life as a result of this passion has been very exciting as well. But ultimately, being my own boss, and having the freedom to do what I'd like to be doing on all facets, whether it's business or personal.
Correct. Okay, so we're in a massive recession now. In 1998, we were also in a massive recession. There was tough times in property. Any words of wisdom, any words of encouragement for somebody that's in property that probably can't see the opportunities out there, or possibly are in a very difficult financial position? So what kind of message would you put out to somebody like that over there? Some people are saying, well, property, I just can't do it. I'm not successful in it. You've disproved that fact. What are your thoughts on that particular aspect?
I think the very important thing is to understand the difference between nominal and real growth in property values. And whenever you read an article that some other economist has written on the property market is in doldrums, this or that, they normally refer to real growth and inflation being taken into effect. The moment you take inflation out, even if your portfolio is growing at 5% a year, that is still significant, and that's on geared growth. And a lot of people tend to focus on the downside of that argument. The point is we're growing in the property market, and if you've got a substantial balance sheet, you're growing and you're not losing money. Your property values aren't going down; they've stabilized. But ultimately, the market is growing. Depending what sector of the market you're in, as the growth could be more or less aggressive. The point is we're growing. What I do know is that property in principle is not a good investment. The right property is a good investment, and you must always strive for cash flow. And I personally don't like speculating on things like vacant land and so forth that cannot yield a cash flow. Somebody needs to pay the bank, and hopefully it's not me. What I do know is the signs in this market are good. We haven't been hit nearly as badly as they've been hit in Europe or other places.
Sure.
So all in all, to us, it's good. Even if you've got stagnating property prices, you'll have an increase in rental prices. And rental prices and the increased yield as a result of the increased rental will always pull the capital value back of the property. So if the capital side is not growing, then the rental side will be growing. If the rental side's not growing, then the capital side will be growing. That is what makes property such a recession-proof business in my mind. And ultimately, the market will always stabilize, whether it's appreciating property value or appreciating rental yield value.
Okay, well, I think that's wise words there, and I think, just for the, we don't have enough time. We could end up talking the rest of the day, Kai. But I think it's been a fantastic day. I've certainly learnt a lot. I've been very inspired by the things that you're doing. The readers will, in fact, read the story in the March edition of Real Estate Investor magazine, so they'll certainly pick up, some good information there. And I think what we have to do, Kai, is to probably get you on the stage on some of our events, because we also do events as well. And I'd love you to be to impart knowledge on the student accommodation in particular, which I think you've done a really fantastic, you've got a wonderful niche there. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity of having this interview and the discussion. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Neale.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.